Good morning. Today I'm going to teach you how to make awesome biscuits in a tiny kitchen. So first of all, you need to get a nice pan. It can just be a stainless pan that you've put nonstick aluminum foil in. Don't just use a stainless with no nonstick foil on top of it, or aluminum half sheet like I've got here with the aluminum foil on it. Of course, that's just because I'm lazy. You can use a rolling pin, you can use your hands. That's actually kind of optional. I like the uniformity. Something to cut your biscuits. You need to have a pastry cutter. You need to get a 1 cup measure. You need to get a sifter. If you don't want to use a sifter, you don't have to. I highly recommend it though. You want to get a nice bowl. It doesn't have to be too big. And then for the ingredients, you're going to want to get buttermilk, self-rising flour, and most importantly, frozen butter, and a box grater. So the reason why you want the frozen butter is because it will give you a much better shortening effect. Things will puff up nicely, be very flaky. It also gives you a lot more leeway rather than using room temp or refrigerated butter when it comes to actually working on the stuff. You don't have a lot of time to work the warmer the butter is. So first thing we'll do is measure out 2 cups of flour into the sifter. And a lot of people will tell you got to go ahead and do a spoon to measure that in, but honestly, after making these biscuits a couple of times, you'll get a pretty good feel for what that texture is supposed to be like. And so if you end up with a little more or a little less flour than you want in your biscuit dough, it'll become readily apparent to you. Alright, now first things first is to go ahead and sift about half of that flour down into your bowl. So that's what we're going to do. And I like to cover the edges of the bowl just a bit, because the next step, what we're going to do to put the butter in, is grate the butter into that bowl, and the less of it that sticks to the side, the better. Yeah, almost there. Let's shake it a little bit. Sides down. Okay, and that is about half. Let's get our cup measure. Right. So it might look silly, but by grating this butter in, and you want 4 tablespoons or a little more or a little less depending on how much butter you like in your stuff. Honestly, I'll probably end up putting in about 5, maybe 6. And just to make your life easier, you flip it over a little bit every time it starts to lag a little bit. Oh no, don't grate your fingers. That would be not delicious. Alright, that little piece can just go in there. And you see what it's got? These beautiful little curls of butter. Now, like I said, I'm probably going to put in about 5 tablespoons, so let's get the rest of that. And for those of you who really care, it is salted butter. You need a little bit of salt in these biscuits. Doesn't have to be much, but the easiest way to get it in there is to just buy salted butter. Alright, so now we make sure that all of our butter has fallen off. I'm sure you'll have some laggards, but that's okay. And we set aside. That's good enough. Now, the reason why you did half and half is because it'll make it easier for nothing to stick when you use the pastry cutter. So sift the rest of your flour in. And yeah, I've got one of those old noisy sifters. I have one of the slightly nicer ones too, but honestly it doesn't matter. It just makes things a little bit lighter and easier to manage when you start doing this, which is next use a pastry cutter. Now you could use a fork, don't get me wrong, but this just makes my life so much easier because it's got the nice curve to it. It lets me use my arm for the strength instead of my wrist like with a fork, so you can just do this to cut that butter into that flour. And so by freezing the butter and then grating it, you've done two things. You made it much easier to handle, and then you've made it more likely to be solid longer as it bakes, which is what gives it a flakiness. See the moisture in the butter, the water moisture in the butter. You see that lovely crumb there? The moisture in the butter, that is the water, will turn into steam and evaporate out and make sort of a pouch, and the oil will melt down and cause the flour to connect to each other and sort of form a nice little plate underneath it. So this is how you create flakes. You create a layer of butter stratified throughout. So what we're going to do is add, and you know, you hear them say this in the good old Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, a scant cup of buttermilk. And to me that means about 15/16 buttermilk, whatever, close enough. Not quite a full cup of buttermilk. Set it aside. Grab a spatula and just start sort of folding it in. Some people would probably tell me to throw it on a mixer, it's no big deal, but getting it hot at this point by adding friction from a mixer is probably not a good idea. And you see it's sort of pulling together a little bit, but it's also sort of leaving some of these little guys behind. And you may think that there is not enough moisture in there for biscuit dough, but there is. My problem with biscuits for so long was that I thought that you had to have wet dough. Of course, I also didn't understand about cold shortening. Alright, now we've got it together. Let's set it aside, flip it over, see if we can bring it together with our hands a bit. Pick up some of that extra stuff. Because inside of that dough, it's actually quite wet still. You can see it's coming together a little bit, and you can feel with your hands, and this is the important thing, to get your hands on it at least once, you can feel with your hands that though this dough is sort of dry on the outside, that it's pretty nice on the inside. It's got it, you know, it's not tacky at all to the finger. It wants to fall apart just a little bit. You can see the little lumps of butter. So what we want to do is grab just a bit of the flour, as an awesome chef that told me you want enough for a 2-hour delay, not to put school out. And you get your dough on top of that, and you sort of work it just a bit. Like, yeah, that looks pretty good. Give it 2 or 3. Bring it together. And what you're doing at this point is getting some layers in there. And not much, but a little bit, you're actually going to be, by doing that, you're going to be developing the gluten. Just a bit. Just a bit. There's not much in there to develop. This, you know, self-rising flour is just all-purpose flour with the leaveners already built in, so it's already got your baking powder and baking soda in there. All right, now you want to lightly flour your rolling pin. Roll it a bit. Look at that, making a mess. Oh, that's the other thing. You may have a small kitchen, but you're still going to make a mess. Alright, so we can flip it one more time. You can see that we've already started to create layers, and it feels a bit loose. It feels dry to the touch, but it also doesn't stick to your counter. And you see how this is moving with it? You can see that there's multiple layers in there. Now, I don't usually go as thin as they say to, because I'm from Nashville and we know how to make biscuits. You don't want to make biscuits that are flat like hockey pucks. You want these guys tall and proud. So, don't cut the edges. Get as many as you can. If you got to rework the dough again, the amount that I've given you is enough to make 8 total, usually. Got these guys. Pull it together again. Now at this point your dough is probably dry enough that you don't need to worry about adding any more flour. You'll notice there's little bits sort of wanting to fly off as we use it. That's okay. One of the best things about biscuits is they're not perfect. They're just biscuits. They're just tasty. Alright, looks like we might get 7 out of this batch. Oh, and the last biscuit is always an ugly one. Sorry, it's just how it is. Or you can make butter pie, but that'll be in a different video. And there's just no way to make that last biscuit be anything other than ugly. Now I hope that I remembered to put at the front of this video to put your oven on preheat and to start cooking your bacon. If I didn't, well, I'm sorry. You want your oven on 475, you want to throw it in there for about 10 minutes. I think maybe we can put one final touch on it before it goes in the oven though. And that would be, take about a tablespoon of butter, microwave that guy, and then we will go ahead and brush that on the tops of the biscuits right before they go in. Where is my brush? There we go. Oh, an homage to my heritage. And also the most important part, make sure that you have plenty of coffee. By the pricking of my thumbs, I think I've got enough butter. You can just hear it. You don't know. Stir that guy up. Make sure we get it nice and melted. Oh yeah, that's great. Give yourself some color. And I was dubious of what it would do to the rise of the biscuits, but I was so wrong. It is absolutely worth putting some butter. I mean, it's generally worth putting butter on it. It's kind of like bacon. How can you go wrong with butter and bacon? The answer is you just can't. Not really. Make sure you get plenty on top of there. Alright, I think that's got us. So, straight into the oven with us. In the middle, 475. 9 minutes. Check it at 10. All right, now it's time to check on our biscuits. Oh, look at that. Looking pretty good. And 1 more minute. Okay. Start, let it go. Get just a little bit more browning on top of it. See, I've got the protein going. As I mentioned before, you want to make sure that you use it. If you use a steel pan, it'd be a non-stick typically is a steel pan. That you want to put that layer of non-stick aluminum foil on top of it. The reason being, if you don't, you'll end up burning the bottoms of your biscuits. It's really easy to burn things on those non-stick pans. If you ever notice that your cookies either come out crispy or burnt on the bottom, it's because of the way the steel is unable to distribute that heat evenly, throughout the oven and throughout the cookies or biscuits. Whereas aluminum will sort of spread it out, and it helps everything stay evenly cooked instead of sort of concentrating all the heat in one place. And the way to test if it's steel versus aluminum is a magnet. If it sticks, it's steel. If it doesn't, it is aluminum. Oh, perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. Well, that is a biscuit right there. You can see we've got some layers. You can see that's probably where we got a little bit of extra flour in between the layers that it came up that easily. These are the second batch, so they're not quite as tall. They didn't lift as much, but I guarantee you that they're delicious. I hope that you enjoy your biscuits. I hope that it works for you. And please drop me a note if you need any help. Thanks.